Thank you for joining this episode of Unsung Heroes Live. Each week, we highlight a hero that has created a life of joy and peace despite the challenges. Through their transparency, life's biggest questions are answered. For additional resources and community support, go to www.christyknights.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Christy Knights. Be real, be raw, just be the hero that you are. Good afternoon. It is great to be with you again. Thank you for joining us at Unsung Heroes Live. My name is Christy Knights, and I am the founder of iRise Leadership Institute and a psychotherapist in private practice. Boy, do I have an amazing guest today. I cannot wait for you to meet a dear friend of mine. My dear friend's name is Leon, and I met him just a few weeks ago, and he really just rocked my world. He is an incredible man with an incredible story that will change your life. So take a seat, relax, enjoy our time together as you get to know Leon. Welcome, Leon. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Christy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. I appreciate you being on the show today.
Not a problem.
So talk to me a little bit about where you're at now, what you're doing, and how you got there.
I guess I should start with how I got here. I'm an Idahoan by nature, and therefore I'm kind of out of place everywhere I go unless I'm in Idaho. So I brought my family out here, and recently I've taken to interest to be able to help achieve what you are achieving, and that is breaking stigma around mental health, in particular around suicide. Since that is something I have dealt with most of my life.
Wow, that is so powerful. What has prompted you to really want to work in this area? You said that you have been suicidal in the past yourself?
Oh, yeah. I was bullied as a youth, quite a bit, actually. It had a lot to do with my health. I had had some struggles with weight issues. I had been the skinniest kid in my class until about third grade, and then I had a thyroid issue is what they told me, and I blossomed, if you will, into being the second heaviest kid in my class within a year and a half. So I dealt with all kinds of issues from that. Friends changed, friends came and go. Usually the friends weren't friends and were just after what they thought they could get from me. And so just kind of led to a lot of just name calling, general neglect, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So share with me, about how old were you then?
I would have been probably around 8 or 9.
Oh, you were so young. How did you deal with the bullying at that time?
I retreated a lot. I gained a stronger relationship with my own mother. She understood what I was going through. She had issues in her past, and she was always there for me to talk to and to reason with. And in a lot of ways, until she passed away in 2009, she was kind of where I always had to turn to.
Okay. Were you able to turn to the school?
I would say pretty much no. I had really good teachers. It was a small town, about 1,200 people total. So they all knew me pretty well, and I guess they just assumed that I was handling things or that my parents were doing a good job of it. And I just kind of went through the motions. It wasn't until I was in high school where an actual guidance counselor kind of befriended me and helped me out a little bit and get through high school. But yeah, I wouldn't say the school did a whole lot up until then.
Okay. That's unfortunate, and we see that often. I think it's still partly an issue today in the schools, although we do have many more anti-bullying programs. I think oftentimes schools do not know how to handle suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, or the stressors that come with a child who is being bullied or the bully themselves. So, that was at 8 or 9. When was the first time that you experienced having thoughts of suicide?
Well, when I was a freshman in high school, I had been planning on following in my dad's footsteps. He had a grocery business, and it was actually one of the strongest businesses in the area for many miles. It was just under West Yellowstone National Park, so it was in a great area too. And he had three business men and with him, and they owned about 51% of the stock. And about the time that my father was about to purchase to own a major share, they all they fired him. They ganged up on him and fired him, and so he got to sit on the sidelines, not manage his store anymore, and watch as it became in the red like almost immediately, because again, it's a small town. I saw him suffer through a lot of massive depression. I, of course, was going through my own, because that was going to be my livelihood, I felt, after I left school. So just a lot of things disrupted then, and didn't help that I didn't have a whole lot of people to turn to.
Right. What were some of the symptoms of depression that you experienced then?
That's similar to what my father was going through. Just a whole lot of crying, a whole lot of just hiding from within and from without. I just it was easy for me to start to determine my own path was going to have to deal with alcohol and drugs, which is something that was prevalent in the area. And it was fairly easy for me to join in, and so I did. And that was just to escape everything else.
Yeah. So, one of the ways that you were coping was through alcohol. And then when was the first time that you were considering suicide?
Oh, gosh. Just about every time I drank, it seemed like it was in my mind. There was a lot of times I just didn't want to come out. It was easy to just want to stay there, laugh a lot, not feel the hurt, the pain, and it was just easy to want to just not wake up from that.
Absolutely. And most often, as you know, in your research and your studies, which we will get to, people who have suicidal thoughts or attempt suicide oftentimes don't have that desire to die, just to escape the pain.
That's true. Yep.
That's what I hear you saying during that time. You're just looking for a way to escape that pain of depression.
Yep, that's exactly it.
When did you begin to recognize that, yes, this is depression and I need help?
Gosh, it probably, I don't know. It was such a blur. I would say that from probably around age 14 till age 23, it was pretty much just reckless behavior, reckless living, doing whatever I could to avoid anything. Often it was just moving from place to place, just avoiding home, the hometown I grew up in.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it took me from Vegas to Boise to a couple semesters at University of Idaho, where all I did was partied there. And I mean, like I said, it was pretty much just wasted years for a long time.
Looking back on those years, what did you learn about yourself?
Well, obviously, I've learned in particular that running away from a problem doesn't ever solve it. It becomes it becomes part of you, and the problem becomes what defines you the more you run away from it. And I can't say that it was easy to mature past that. It was something that I think it took a lot of intervention. Probably the chief intervention beyond my parents was when I met my wife. So that was huge for me.
Absolutely. How old were you when you met your wife?
I was about 23, 24-ish. Yeah, we got married when I was 27, and I, at that time, had made commitments that I was not going to pursue the drinking and the drugging anymore. It was something that we were both set on, and that has been actually very, very helpful to me to not have that to run to, but it has not stopped the issues that I've had, of course.
Right. Okay. So that relationship for you with your wife was really pivotal in your course of healing.
Yes. Yeah. She has been pretty much everything to me.
How long have you been together now?
We just celebrated 22 full years just a few months ago, so we've been together a while.
Congratulations. That is amazing.
Thank you.
Through those years, were there other times that you had thought about suicide or attempted suicide?
Not for a long time. We had 5 wonderful children, all from Rexburg, Idaho's hospital, and
Wow.
5 tries for a girl and 5 boys came along, and
Wonderful.
yeah. Then I started having struggles with the career I was in. I'd followed my grandfather's charge and got into the United States Postal Service, and I thought that was going to be my answer for everything. It was going to be the career. It was something that he had done for 25 years, and I felt like I was following in the best feet prints I'd ever seen. So I thought I was doing wise. And unfortunately, around 2000, maybe 3-ish, that started to fall apart. I started having issues with a new postmaster, and there was just so much clashing going on that eventually my wife convinced me to move out this way, and we did that in 2007.
Great, great. What was that move like with a family?
It was actually kind of a lot of hope. There was, for me, it was hope that I was avoiding a demise in a career. I thought that maybe just that would be a simple solution. Obviously, it also had some other semblance of reason for us, because my kids were not getting very much mental health out there help as well. We have 2 children that are on the autism spectrum somewhat, and one that is diagnosed bipolar, and so we felt like this would be also a better area for them in receiving services, and it has been for sure on that. So,
Oh, that is wonderful. So 5 children, what are their ages today?
They go from 12 to 20.
Wow, that's incredible. And you're a parent who deals with a child with mental health issues.
Yeah, definitely do.
How have you been able to manage your stress around that?
Well, again, I give pretty much a predominant share of the credit to my wife. She chose to stay at home. That was her choice, and I've always told her that she will serve the world wonderful as she decides to return, and she has. But while she was with the children, she definitely helped them through a lot of their trials. Of course, the stresses of moving, coming out here, a lot more bullying out here than even what we'd experienced out there. And
Oh, wow.
But at least the mental health services and the wraparound and things like that have been monumental in helping our kids along.
Yes. So reaching out for services and surrounding them with services has been really useful for you.
Yes, it has.
Has any of your children struggled with anxiety or depression?
Yes, the bipolar child, my middle child, has he's suffered probably the most. A lot of people, when they look at him, they see a lot of me, and so there's been always that clash. There's our relationship, probably of all of the 5 children, has been the one that has had the hardest ups and downs.
Yes.
But yeah, for the most part, it still has been a process that I think has helped him out.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I'm sure you having your history and your history with your dad, you brought into that relationship knowledge that many parents don't have, and how to cope with the life experiences of someone with bipolar disorder.
Yes, that's true.
How have you risen from a place of darkness to be able to experience joy in your life?
Well, a lot of that has had to do with my faith. I have very staunch faith that that has been given me from my parents, but I've chosen to follow suit and learn on my own. Just realizing that we can be broken, but yet it's all an achievement at the end, that we overcome, and there's something worth overcoming for. And so for me, it's been just having the knowledge that everything is just for a season.
Yes, yes. And your faith, being able to keep it in perspective and then having that faith, sounds like it has just been an anchor for you. In what ways do you use your faith on a daily basis to help and support?
Well, that's funny you should mention that, because a lot of times I can, I'll be just thinking about something I've read or something I've learned in the past, and it will take on a whole new form. The other day I was thinking about a parable that I had remembered for the longest time, and it was always... It had always left me with some kind of an odd feeling, and that was the parable of the talents, where the father had given 5 talents to one, 2 to another, and 1 to a third. And I'd always thought, well, I'd always stopped there. I'd always thought that no good father would do that. No good father would give 5 and then 2 and then 1.
Right.
And so I was thinking about that a couple nights ago, and all of a sudden it just it hit me. What if this is actually what we make of life? What if the person with 5 talents literally is just given a lot more opportunities, pursues a lot more opportunities, and just is successful with those? What if that person with 2 has a few less opportunities, maybe grew up in a lower status area? And what if that person with 1 just never saw themselves as having much and decided to hide it, such as a suicidal person hides everything that they're about so that they can avoid the onrush of feelings that come with it. And so a lot of times we just persevere, we pursue, and then we still end up suffering. One of the aspects of it is if you don't hide yourself, and if you manage, at the end it sounds like you'll receive everything that the 5 and the 2 received. So just don't hide.
I absolutely love that. I think that is so powerful. It gave me chills, Leon. Thank you so much for sharing that insight and that wisdom.
Thank you.
What are some of the common myths that you've experienced with your diagnosis? And if you could share that with our audience too, that would be great.
Well, for one, that they think that you'll just somehow snap out of it, as if it's just going to end. That is probably one of the first things that we deal with as we learn we have some kind of a disorder or a challenge, if you will. We feel like it's just something that perhaps we just wait it out and it's gone. And that's, of course, not going to happen. It's something that's always there. It's kind of like your friend or your enemy if you choose it one way or the other. And so there's that. Of course, the biggest thing to me has been the stigma that surrounds it. There's just so much of a lack of compassion that comes from a lack of talking. People just don't want to deal with other people's problems. I think that when we tend to forget those that have not, and those that have not are oftentimes ones that just want to get along in life and want to be friends and do the best they can. But it's hard to do that when you have so many less opportunities often.
Yes, that is very true. That is very true. So can you share with the audience the diagnosis that you've struggled with?
Well, when I was with the post office and when I finally suffered my mental breakdown in 2008, it was, in effect, as I look back, it has definitely been proven to me that it was a post-traumatic stress disorder. However, because I was in a federal institution and because it was much better to make me look worse than they, I was diagnosed agoraphobic by their doctors, and so that made it sound as if I was completely cracked and broken, and it wasn't something that was caused from within.
Right, right. How did you feel hearing their diagnosis?
Well, I didn't understand. I mean, I'm used to the idea that agoraphobia means that you're scared to go out. And
Right, right.
for me, because I've since learned that I'm on the autism spectrum somewhat as well, it would make more sense to go to the realms. I'm just not, I'm socially awkward. I'm just awkward around people.
Okay.
And so it's not that I fear going out as agoraphobia would be. I don't have a problem with the challenge of going out. I just have a problem with staying out sometimes. And so it just didn't resound to me. It seemed like it was more of another slam, another thing that would put me down. And so then I suffered another mental breakdown 2 years later. So.
Okay. What impact did that label do to you over the next 2 years?
Well, for one, it was relentless. It was like I was gripped by something that I couldn't change. I felt like they had won. I felt like everything about what used to be the common joke in the post office. I know it's morbid, but the whole going postal thing was kind of something that would be joked about. And for me, I've looked back on that, and it was always, for me, going postal meant I went inward and not outward. I was not a threat to anybody but myself, and so it added to that quite a bit, which is why there was no end to it after 2008. And so that's when the pills came along, and that's when the first suicide attempt and the first hospitalization after my 2008 one.
Okay. So what led to that attempt?
Well, all of that miscommunication going on in my own head, for one. Which obviously clouded over every conversation I had with the people that weren't trying to convince me wrongly. My wife and I had several talks, and I think I just misunderstood things. I was in a place where it didn't matter what people were saying. It just was filtered the way I needed it or thought I should. And pretty soon that just led to a really awkward moment where I chose to swallow a lot of cyclobenzaprines and woke up in the hospital and allowed them to move me on.
Okay. What were your thoughts as you swallowed the pills?
Well, that people would be better off not seeing me continue to fight. It seemed like I was more of a burden. It seemed like I was just somebody that was never going to come out. So it was better for them not to have to deal with that aspect of me, which is it's shameful because it is totally the opposite. It's just all you're doing is adding the worst kind of burden.
I really appreciate your vulnerability and your authenticity as you share with us. As you know, I compiled a book of 35 authors who shared their story, much like you're sharing yours, in print form. And the common thread is what you just said. The common thread is each person felt as if they were a burden. Each person felt as if everyone around them would do better without them. But as you have just shared, that's the farthest from the truth.
That's totally the farthest from the truth. In fact, as I'm still looking forward to the book. I purchased it while I was down there in Butler, and I can't wait. It definitely sounded like something I would probably mark up and have beside me quite often, because it's easier to relate. I think it's easier to feel the kinship of others, and that sounds like 35 people that I can certainly relate to.
Absolutely, absolutely. We just received the box of books on Saturday, so you can be looking in the mail this week for it.
Sounds wonderful.
Yes. And I think you'll see that you are equally as brave as each of the person in the book, the authors. So you had said that you went on then to attempt suicide 2 more times?
Actually, I attempted one other time, and it was where I was caught with a plan is what it was. So I didn't actually get to fulfill it, which is probably good considering this was going to not be pills. This was going to be an actual knife. So, yeah, I had started an ideation. I'd started dwelling on a certain knife that we had in the house. It was pretty color blue, and it was real easy for me to focus on that being the one. And so I was caught in the middle of that, and that's a good thing because that's when I finally hit the bottom, if you will, and that's when things really did change.
Okay. So through those struggles, how did your wife support you?
Well, she wasn't about to play any games. She knew that it was out of her expertise. She's never been one to shy away from getting help for me, and she's usually the one that takes me. She doesn't just expect me to leave and go. She walks me to wherever I need to be, and that has always been part of the symbol of our equality is that she just doesn't leave me. She never will.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's so powerful and beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
Just having that unconditional love and care. What would you say, how has your mental health impacted your marriage?
Well, to be honest, I think to a certain point, I could say it's been strengthening.
I love it. Yes,
it's one of those things that we often have joked, and I hope that I'm right when I assume other couples think about the days when they hear the words for better or for worse, and we often have joked about certain things as being those for worse moments, and that kind of just puts them into perspective. It reminds us that there's the end, the outcome that we're looking for, which we want to achieve together and be together, and so it's about perspective, and I think that she has been such a strong perspective in my life that I can't ever give up anymore.
Yes. And how has your mental well-being affected your parenting?
Well, it's of course meant to several clashes with the one, as I've mentioned. However, with the others, they all see me as you have mentioned several times, the vulnerable and the one that while I'm broken at times, that I still care, and that I am still around. That I can give a lot of thanks, of course, to my faith and to my wife, but the fact that I'm still around means that they still have somebody that they can go to and pretty much say just about anything to, and I'm going to understand the depth of their emotion because I'm there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can be very unconditional and real with them as well.
Yep.
So as you are on the journey to healing, what are some roadblocks that you've encountered?
Just about everything has to do with one P word, and that's politics or policy. Seems like whether it's about mental health, all of the things that we have had to fight for throughout the decades, even the century, just getting some semblance of ability to receive help the way we should. And even then, it's still only a fraction as to where we need to be with that in this country. But gosh, I think that the biggest thing has been policy and the policy makers. They just always seem to be out for themselves. They're the haves and we're the have-nots, and often we're just relying upon them to do the right things for us. And unfortunately, it's not always happening.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's definitely been a roadblock. How have you worked through overcoming it?
A lot of times it's been just bashing heads. I'm a Taurus. I am bullheaded. So when I'm at my peak, at the strength that I can have, oftentimes somebody's not going to pass one by without me, with my big picture view, set of eyes, seeing what they're really after. And Yeah, that's meant a lot of issues in my life, of course, but in this particular instance, it means that I can be a decorated student and
Yeah.
yet still have to stand my ground and say, you know what, being a student isn't worth all of this.
Absolutely. So you were a student. Where are you a student at?
I'm a student up here at Penn State Shenango.
Wonderful. How's your experience been as a student?
With students, faculty, and staff, it has been probably the epitome of heaven. I've absolutely loved cracking the books open. I've loved achieving more than I ever had before. I used to be a B plus average student, and I used to think that was amazing. But I've been pulling straight A's semester after semester. I'm a 3.96 GPA as I currently am. And I think that I've pursued the right things. I pursued sociology. I pursued things that would keep me culturally wise and sensitive. I pursued pretty much anything that has to do with adolescence, because everything to me is about making sure others don't step the same fine lines that I had to.
Yes. And what is your major?
Human development and family studies.
Wonderful. And what would you like to do with it when you graduate?
Well, I'd like to graduate first, but it would definitely be an opening. I've thought of 3 different ways I could go with it. I've thought of the education path that I had been on back in the 80s, feeling like I had the ability to talk to people. I've looked at 2 other options. One, of course, would be any kind of social work or one-on-one counseling, therapy, that type of scenario. And of course, a few other options. One would be guidance counselors, but I've looked into that, and that's just an actual total difference from the way it used to be.
It is, yes. It's very administrative.
Yeah, and then of course that brings me to policy, and that would be where I would have possibly tried to pursue political science.
Okay. Yes. Very good. Very good. So share with me, if you could write a thank you letter to someone, who would it be?
Well, if you don't mind me saying so, it would definitely be to Jesus himself.
I love it.
He has been where I'm at and everywhere else. He's been where everyone's at. And of course, none of that was deserved. That was all chosen. And that was all something that he was willing to do. And so I would have to recommend him for any position in the world.
Yes.
What an amazing feat to love unconditionally and openly like that. And so my first letter would definitely be to him.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And can you share with the audience what has kept you going and surmounting each of these challenges in life?
Wow, I think I saw it once on a movie. You wake up and then you wake up again and then you just continue. Can't remember the movie, but I remember just sitting there going, wow, that's really profound and deep. That's kind of what you do in this life until you're done. It's kind of like enduring. You just endure it. And for some reason, it's always through the endurance that you end up stronger and wiser and helpful and all of those. So as much as we hate to go through the trials, it's what makes us who we are, and the better version of that.
Yes. So if someone is in your place experiencing the stressors of life with a diagnosis, having suicidal thoughts, what would you say to them today?
Well, easily I would first start out by saying I care. That's first and foremost. They need to know that what their truth is and what their experience is, no matter how much I've been there, it's still going to be through their set of eyes and through their principles. And so my answer is only theirs if they see the reasoning behind it. So the first thing I have to do is see them where they're at, and that is, their experience is valid, and what I just want to learn. At that point, it's please tell me about that experience. Please share your story. Please open up and just it's almost like a relentless love. You just want to just open up and even open up your eyes and let the tears flow. Because oftentimes it's when I've seen the eyes start to cloud over and film up that I felt like I was being hurt too. So
wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there other details of your story that you feel it's important to share before we wrap up today?
Well, I would first plug the movie. I went to that movie a couple weeks ago down in Butler, and I'll tell you what, you weren't kidding when you said that it would change lives. That I saw probably one of the best facets of that movie. The ripple effect as being the fact that he gathered together every single person on all different climes, on all different continents, and every single person had a different way to benefit the suicidal mind. And it wasn't a competition. I've dealt with a lot of those places when I've looked on their websites myself, and I've always been impressed, but I've always felt like in this society we feel like we have to compete. At the end, when he is on stage with all of those different folk and the wonderful Aborigine gentleman who I really relate to, I just absolutely love that. And it was just camaraderie. It's something that we all need more of, and especially with suicidal.
Absolutely. And the movie you're referring to is the documentary by Kevin Hines, Suicide, the Ripple Effect. And it is really having truly a ripple effect across the globe. And that is where you and I met. And I think that you're right, that feeling, that sense of camaraderie, that feeling of belonging, we just don't have that enough. And I think we definitely felt that in the theater as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It was powerful to be there.
It was.
What makes it important for you to share your story today?
Well, first and foremost, I was invited to. I don't think I should expect anyone to listen to me unless they choose to. And it should be an invitation. And that is one of those things I saw from the moment I started to update my LinkedIn account. I saw a face on there that reminded me of my mother's a lot, and I started following. And then I attended a special movie premiere. I got to know that person, and I see why the feeling was just right. It's worth following up on what you feel, and I just see a lot of what you are able to accomplish and what you are accomplishing, and you know it's kind of hard to not want to just be part of that movement.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your story. You are truly a hero. This is Unsung Heroes, but see, through our time together, you are now a sung hero, where the globe will hear your voice, your story, and know that they too can crawl out of that place of darkness, shine and serve and give back. And so I am so grateful for you, Leon. I'm so grateful for your life and all the lives you will touch in the future by your survival.
That's what I'm hoping. That is everything right now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, audience, for joining Unsung Heroes. And again, my name is Christy Knights. I am your host of Unsung Heroes Alive podcast, where every story saves a life.